I answered a question on my Cicerone Beer Server exam because I remembered this beer. Not a flashcard, not some paragraph I had to memorize. I remembered Medusa from Copperhead Brewery. And that only happened because Seth and the Copperhead team brewed a perfect Belgian Quad that made the entire style stick. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Brewbots and Barbells, where we lift pints and weights. And today we're heading back to Conroe, Texas for a beer that has become part of my personal craft beer journey. This right here is Medusa from Copperhead Brewery. It's a Belgian-style quadruple sitting at 10.5% ABV. This episode is much more than just spotlighting a strong Belgian beer. It's about how an excellent brewery can take something you read in a book and turn it into an experience you never forget. Copperhead Brewery is one of my favorite Texas breweries. Bart, Seth, and the entire team have created the kind of brewery that feels familiar when you walk through the door. The beer is taken seriously, the brewing is consistent, but the atmosphere never feels stiff and unapproachable. It's super welcoming, and it feels personal. And I know they just did a recent remodel, which I heard was amazing. It feels like it's a kind of place where you can sit down, talk with people, learn something about the beer, and genuinely feel like you belong there. And that balance is important. There are breweries with great beer. There are breweries with great atmosphere. Copperhead has consistently given me both. And Medusa is one of those beers that best represents why I hold them with such high regard. When I began studying for the Cicerone Beer Server certification, which is the level 1, I had a lot of information moving through my head constantly. Beer styles, ingredients, glassware, storage, serving temperatures, draft systems, flavor characteristics, the usual academic avalanche, you would say. One of the styles I knew I needed to recognize was the Belgian Quad. You can read a description and memorize words like strong, malty, fruity, warming. But memorizing a list and understanding the beer are two very different things. When that style appeared during my exam, I instantly remembered Medusa. And I remembered the flavors, the strength. I remembered how the malt, yeast, sugar, and alcohol worked together. And the answer became much more easier because Seth had brewed a beer that clearly expressed that style. And this is what good brewing can do. It can turn information into memory. And to you, what is a Belgian Quad? Okay, a Belgian Quad is one of the strongest and richest members of the Belgian ale family. You will sometimes see these beers grouped closely with the Belgian dark strong ales. The exact terminology can shift depending on the brewery or the style guide, but the drinking experience genuinely centers around high alcohol, rich malt character, expressive Belgian fermentation, caramelized sugar, dried or ripe fruit impressions with like a gentle spice on it. And what makes this style fascinating is that it can feel huge without necessarily feeling thick or syrupy. A well-made quad like this should have power, but it has balance as well. It should be layered rather than burnt, and Medusa does an excellent job showing that distinction. When people describe this style, they often use the phrase dark fruit. That phrase is useful in a category, but it doesn't really have a good explanation for the customer. With Medusa, just think you get flavors that resemble raisins, figs, dates, ripe plum, maybe some black cherry or dark grape, depending on the pour and serving temperature. Then underneath those fruit impressions, you start finding caramelized sugar, sweet bread, toasted crust, that little Belgian spice I was talking about, with a nice warming finish. And oh my gosh, you get a clearer picture than just simply saying fruity or malty. I'm sorry, talking about that made me thirsty. A fruit character basically gives the beer depth, and the bread malt kind of gives it that foundation. The sugar really helps build that alcohol and complexity, and the yeast, that does its job, connects everything. Now, why the yeast matters, I saved that for last. So the Belgian Abbey yeast is one of the central characters in this beer. In many American beer styles, the brewer may choose a relatively clean yeast because they want the hops or the malt to stand out in the front. Well, Belgian brewing often gives yeast that much louder voice. During fermentation, like those Belgian yeasts can give those really creative compounds that remind you of fruit and spice. That doesn't necessarily mean Copperhead's adding raisins or plums or figs or something. Just the sensory impressions, basically, during the fermentation itself. That's the part of the magic. That's why yeast is so exciting. It's not simply converting sugar into alcohol. It's kind of helping that flavor story. And when the fermentation is controlled properly, you get great complex flavors without all the chaos. Now, Medusa does use Belgian candy sugar. A common misconception is adding sugar automatically makes a beer thick and overly sweet like the stouts. But these the fermentable sugars can help increase the alcohol without making it super heavy. Depending on the product and the brewing, you can kind of get impressions of that caramelized sugar, dark syrup, the toffee flavors. That helps kind of keep this beer reaching that 10.5% while remaining surprisingly smooth. So the beer has great weight, great presence, but it doesn't feel like it's poured like pancake syrup is best I can say, like molasses. That balance is one of the clearest signs that Seth's skills is in this style. Under all the fermentation character is the malt though. Copperhead describes Medusa as transitioning from a sweet to bready malt base. That's a perfect way to kind of think of the foundation of this beer. Imagine fresh bread, toasted crust, jumping into that caramelized sugar, and then ending in that biscuit, supporting by that fruit and spice. The malt is grabbing that attention and creating that structure. Without the malt foundation, the fruit character kind of scattered and it's kind of sugary. It wouldn't really be all that. But everything has a job and it did its job. So then we got to jump into that packaging. So the artwork to me is absolutely sick. Medusa is front and center. She has a nice pale face, purple serpents, the red accents, and the berries woven through the design. Like I thought that's so cool, almost like a hairpiece. It looks mythological, powerful, elegant, and honestly dangerous. And it fits this beer perfectly because at 10.5%, this Belgian Quad feels smooth. You forget how strong it is until you're like almost all the way through. So the Medusa theme works on more than one level. She grabs your attention from the shelf. The beer slowly turns your legs to stone. This is not a beer I would drink ice cold. At refrigerator temperature, some of those fruit and bread notes can kind of be muted. So what I did was when I opened this and I cracked it, I let it warm up. As you can see, the condensation is basically gone. And that aroma starts to waken up. And then that's when you notice those plum, raisin's actually pretty nice in front center in my opinion. But that gentle spice, sip it slowly. At 10%, at over 10%, Medusa is not designed for running. It's a conversation beer. It's a beer you revisit over 20 to 30 minutes. Watch how the flavor truly evolves as the temperature rises. That progression is a part of that experience. Medusa helped me answer an exam question in the beginning, but that's not the only part of why this matters. The bigger story is that it represents where my enjoyment of beer began over there in Houston. I did not want to be just somebody that would say, this is good, it's fruity, it's smooth. I wanted to understand what I was experiencing. Why does it remind me of raisins? Why is the body strong, but it's not like overly bearing? What is the yeast contributing to this? How is the bitterness balancing the sweetness? This beer kind of opened up my eyes in this style to truly understand it, and it really helped me move into that direction. But I also do not want the education to overshadow the brewery, because Medusa is not just a technical example. It is a beer made by people I respect as a brewery that have consistently made me feel like I'm at home. Bart, Seth, and their team have created a culture that makes people want to keep coming back. Copperhead is that kind of place where the beer can be technically impressive without the beer losing its personality. You can learn something while sitting there relaxing. You can enjoy a serious beer without the environment taking itself too seriously. And that's the part that makes a local brewery valuable. The best tap rooms are not simply retail spaces. They become gathering places. They become part of somebody's routine. I mean, for me, anytime I'm back in Houston, this is my first stop. Eventually, they become part of somebody's story. Copperhead became a part of mine. Medusa is everything I wanted from a memorable Belgian Quad. Rich flavors, caramelized sugar, those sweet breads, a warming finish, serious alcohol that remains impressively controlled, artwork that makes the beer itself stand out before you taste it, and a brewery culture that gives you a reason to return after the glass is empty. This beer helped me understand a style. It helped me during my certification exam, and years later, I am still finding a reason to talk about Copperhead. I love that brewery. So if Copperhead has Medusa available, grab it while you can, pour it into the proper glass, let it warm up, take your time, and pay attention to how those flavors really develop. Follow Copperhead. Help support Bart, Seth, and their team. Show them some love out of Conroe, Texas. If you're in Houston, take that trip. Let them know I sent you. And tell me in the comments, what beer helped an entire style finally make sense to you? Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and follow Brewbots and Barbells for more brewery stories, ingredient education, beer history, and the people behind every glass. Every brewery that I show here truly appreciates the support, and it makes a huge difference. I'm Bennett with Brewbots and Barbells. Until next time, keep learning what's in your glass, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Cheers.